Imagine a young woman so broken by life that she's grateful for crumbs of kindness, serving coffee to people who treat her like she's invisible. What happens when the most powerful man in the city walks into her small world and sees something everyone else missed? But this isn't just a love story between a billionaire and a waitress. This is about secrets that could destroy lives, betrayals that cut deeper than any wound, and a shocking truth that will leave you breathless. So settle in, because you're about to witness a tale of love, redemption, and a twist that will change everything you thought you knew. This is Maya's story, and trust me, you'll never forget it. Maya Chen wiped down the same table for the third time, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to ignore the whispers from the corner booth. The Morning Brew Cafe wasn't much to look at: chipped tiles, mismatched chairs, and a coffee machine that wheezed like an old man, but it was all she had. After 6 months of searching for work, this was the only place that would hire someone with her limited experience and no references. "Maya!" The sharp voice of her manager, Derek, cut through the gentle hum of conversation. "Table 7 is still waiting for their order." "What are you doing, daydreaming again?" Heat flooded Maya's cheeks as every customer in the cafe turned to stare. At 23, she should have been used to this kind of humiliation by now, but it still stung. She grabbed the coffee pot with shaking hands and hurried toward table 7, where 2 women in expensive suits were checking their watches impatiently. "Finally," one of them muttered as Maya approached. "We ordered 20 minutes ago. Some of us have real jobs to get to." "I'm so sorry for the delay," Maya said softly, pouring their coffee with careful precision. "Your pastries will be right. Out." The blonde woman looked her up and down with obvious disdain. "You know, if you can't handle a simple coffee order, maybe you should find a different line of work. There are plenty of other waitresses who actually know what they're doing." Maya's throat tightened, but she forced a smile. "You're absolutely right. I'll do better." As she turned to leave, the woman's voice followed her. "Some people just don't belong in the service industry. It's embarrassing, really." Maya retreated to the kitchen, blinking back tears. This was her life now. Endless humiliation, customers who treated her like she was beneath them, and a manager who seemed to take pleasure in her mistakes. But she needed this job. After her father's medical bills had drained their savings and forced them to lose their house, Maya had become the sole provider for her family. Her mother's part-time work at a dry cleaner barely covered utilities, and Maya's wages, as meager as they were, kept food on the table. "Order up," called Jimmy, the cook, sliding 2 plates across the service window. "Table 7, right? Those ladies who think they're too good for this place." Maya nodded, grateful for Jimmy's understanding smile. At 62, he'd worked in kitchens his whole life and had seen every kind of customer imaginable. He was one of the few people at the cafe who treated her with genuine kindness. "Don't let them get to you, kid," he said quietly. "Some folks measure their worth by how small they can make others feel. That says more about them than it does about you." Maya managed a real smile this time. "Thanks, Jimmy. You always know what to say." She picked up the plates and made her way back to table 7, where the women were now deep in conversation about their upcoming spa weekend. As Maya set down their food, she caught fragments of their discussion. $1,000, handbags, vacation homes in the Hamptons, charity galas where they'd be seen by all the right people. "Excuse me," the brunette said, not bothering to look up from her phone. "This croissant is cold. Can you have them warm it up?" Maya examined the pastry, which was clearly fine, but she nodded. "Of course. I'll take care of that right away. And bring us fresh coffee while you're at it," the blonde added. "This tastes like it's been sitting for hours." Maya had just brewed that pot 15 minutes ago, but she didn't argue. She collected their barely touched cups and headed back to the kitchen, trying to ignore the snickers from the table behind them, where 2 college students were clearly amused by her treatment. As she waited for Jimmy to warm the croissant, Maya caught her reflection in the chrome surface of the coffee machine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her uniform was wrinkled from the morning rush, and exhaustion showed in her dark eyes. When had she started looking so defeated? "Maya!" Derek's voice boomed across the cafe again. "You've got a new table." foretop by the window. Maya glanced toward the front of the restaurant and froze. A man sat alone at the table Derek had indicated, but he wasn't like their usual customers. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power, from his perfectly tailored charcoal suit to the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. He was perhaps in his early 30s, with dark hair and the kind of classic features that belonged in magazines. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. They were a striking grey blue, and they were watching her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. This was Alexander Stone. Maya recognized him immediately. Anyone in the city would. His face had been on the cover of Forbes magazine just last month, and his company, Stone Enterprises, owned half the commercial real estate in downtown. He was worth billions, influential beyond measure, and absolutely the last person she'd expect to find in a rundown cafe like this. Maya smoothed her hair and approached his table, her heart pounding. What was Alexander Stone doing here? The Morning Brew was hardly the kind of establishment someone like him would frequent. Maybe he was lost, or perhaps this was some kind of mistake. "Good morning," she said, proud that her voice came out steady. "Welcome to Morning Brew. Can I start you with some coffee?" Alexander looked up from the newspaper he'd been reading, and when their eyes met, Maya felt something shift in the air between them. His gaze was penetrating but not unkind, and she noticed tiny laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than his serious expression indicated. Coffee would be perfect, he said, and his voice was exactly what she'd expected, deep, cultured, with the kind of authority that came from being accustomed to having people listen when he spoke. "And I'd like to see a menu, please." Maya poured his coffee with extra care, hyper-aware of his presence. She could feel him watching her movements, and she prayed her hands wouldn't shake. When she set the cup in front of him, their fingers brushed briefly as he reached for it, and she felt a jolt of electricity that she tried to ignore. "Here's our menu," she said, placing the laminated card beside his coffee. "Our specials today are the Western omelette and blueberry pancakes. Though I should mention that our omelette cook is having an off day, so the pancakes might be a safer choice." She immediately regretted the comment. What was she doing, criticizing the cafe's food to their most important customer ever? Derek would fire her on the spot if he heard her, but instead of looking annoyed, Alexander smiled, a genuine, warm expression that transformed his entire face. "I appreciate the honesty. Pancakes it is, then." Maya nodded, scribbling the order on her pad. "Would you like bacon or sausage with that?" "Bacon, please. And Maya?" She looked up in surprise. How did he know her name? "Thank you for the recommendation. It's refreshing to meet someone who tells the truth." Heat flooded Maya's cheeks, and she found herself smiling back. "I'll get your order in right away, Mr. Stone." As she walked toward the kitchen, Maya felt lighter than she had in months. Alexander Stone, one of the most powerful men in the Jew city, had not only been kind to her, but he'd actually listened to what she had to say. It was such a small thing, but after the morning she'd had, it felt like a gift. "Jimmy," she called, sliding the order across the pass. "One order of blueberry pancakes with bacon, and make them your best ones, okay? This is important." Jimmy glanced toward Alexander's table and raised his eyebrows. "Well, I'll be damned. That's Alexander Stone, isn't it? What's he doing in a place like this?" "I have no idea," Maya admitted, "but let's make sure he has a good experience." As Jimmy got to work on the pancakes, Maya found herself stealing glances at Alexander's table. He was reading his newspaper and checking his phone periodically, but he seemed completely at ease despite being clearly out of place in the modest cafe. Every few minutes their eyes would meet, and he'd give her a small nod or smile that made her pulse quicken. "Maya?" Derek's voice startled her out of her reverie. "Stop gawking and get back to work. Table 12 needs their check." Maya hurried to attend to her other customers, but she remained acutely aware of Alexander's presence. When his pancakes were ready, she approached his table with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. "Here you are," she said, setting the plate in front of him. "Jimmy made these especially for you." Alexander cut into the pancakes and took a bite, closing his eyes briefly as he savored the flavor. "These are excellent. Please give my compliments." "To the chef." "I will." He'll be thrilled to hear that. Maya, Alexander said suddenly, setting down his fork. I couldn't help but notice what happened earlier with those women. The way they spoke to you was completely unacceptable. Maya's stomach dropped. She'd hoped he hadn't witnessed that humiliating encounter. It's okay, she said quickly. I'm used to it. That doesn't make it right. His grey-blue eyes flashed with something that might have been anger. No one should have to endure that kind of treatment, especially not someone who's clearly working hard to do their job well. The kindness in his voice almost undid her. Maya had grown so accustomed to being invisible, to being treated as less than human by customers and her manager alike, that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have someone see her as a person worthy of respect. Thank you, she said softly. That means more than you know. Alexander studied her face for a moment, and Maya had the strange feeling he was seeing something others missed. Have you worked here long? About 6 months. It's not much, but it pays the bills. And before that, Maya hesitated. Her story wasn't particularly inspiring. A college dropout who'd had to leave school when her family hit financial difficulties, followed by months of failed job interviews and mounting desperation. But something about Alexander's genuine interest made her want to be honest. I was in college studying business administration, but when my father got sick, I had to leave to help support my family. This was the first place that would hire me. Alexander nodded, and Maya saw understanding in his expression, rather than the pity or judgment she'd grown to expect. That must have been a difficult decision. It was the only decision, Maya said simply. Family comes first. I respect that, Alexander said, and she could tell he meant it. Not everyone would make such a sacrifice. Their conversation was interrupted by Derek's appearance at the table. Maya's manager had clearly noticed who she was talking to and had rushed over to handle the situation personally. Mr. Stone, Derek said, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. What an honor to have you here at Morning Brew. I'm Derek Williams, the manager. I hope Maya has been taking good care of you. Sometimes our newer employees need a bit of guidance with our more distinguished guests. Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Derek was basically telling Alexander that she wasn't competent enough to serve him properly. But Alexander's expression remained neutral as he looked up at Derek. Maya has been exceptional. The service has been perfect, and she made an excellent recommendation for breakfast. You're lucky to have such a dedicated employee. Derek's smile faltered slightly. Oh, well, of course Maya is. She tries her best. But if there's anything else you need, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask for me personally. Thank you, but Maya has everything well in hand, Alexander said firmly, then turned his attention back to his breakfast, effectively dismissing Derek. Maya watched her manager retreat with barely concealed frustration, and she had to bite her lip to keep from smiling. No one had ever defended her like that before. It was such a small gesture, but it felt enormous. Alexander finished his meal while Maya attended to her other tables, but she remained aware of his presence throughout. When he finally signaled for his check, she hurried over with mixed feelings, glad that he'd had a good experience, but sad to see him go. Here's your check, she said, setting the bill on the table. I hope everything was to your satisfaction. It was perfect, Alexander said, pulling out his wallet. He placed a $50 bill on the table, nearly 3 times the cost of his meal. The tip is for you, Maya. Thank you for the excellent service. Maya stared at the money in shock. $50 was more than she usually made in tips during an entire shift. Mr. Stone, this is too much. I can't accept this. You can and you will, he said firmly but kindly. You've earned it. He stood to leave, then paused and pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. Maya, I'd like to make you an offer. Stone Enterprises is always looking for dedicated, honest people. If you're interested in a change of scenery, call me. Maya took the card with trembling fingers. I don't understand. What kind of position? We'll discuss that when you call. But I have a feeling you're capable of much, more than serving coffee, no matter how excellently you do it. With that, Alexander Stone walked out of the Morning Brew Cafe, leaving Maya staring at his business card in stunned silence. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. What did he give you? Derek appeared at her shoulder, eyeing the business card with suspicion. Nothing important, Maya said quickly, slipping the card into her apron pocket. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't true. This card, this moment, felt like everything. Maya couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed in the tiny apartment she shared with her parents, staring at Alexander Stone's business card by the light of her phone. The elegant script of his name seemed to glow in the darkness, and she kept reading it over and over, unable to believe that this was real. Stone Enterprises. Alexander Stone, CEO. What kind of job could he possibly want to offer her? Maya had dropped out of college after just 2 years, had no professional experience beyond waitressing, and lived in the kind of neighborhood where Alexander Stone's car probably cost more than most people's houses. It didn't make sense. But the memory of his kindness, the way he'd looked at her like she was a person worth knowing, kept her hope alive. For the first time in months, maybe years, Maya allowed herself to dream about a different future. The next morning at the cafe, Maya went through her usual routine, but her mind was elsewhere. Every few minutes, she'd touch the business card, in her pocket, reassuring herself that yesterday had really happened. The other waitresses noticed her distraction immediately. "You're practically glowing this morning," said Stacy, a girl about Maya's age who'd been working at Morning Brew for 2 years. "Did you finally get some action last night?" Maya blushed. "Nothing like that. I just had a good day yesterday." "Must have been one hell of a day," Stacy commented, tying her apron. "You look different, happier." Before Maya could respond, Derek emerged from the back office, his expression sour as usual. "Maya, I need to talk to you. Now." Maya's stomach clenched. Had someone complained about her service? Had Derek somehow found out about Alexander's business card? She followed her manager to the small, cluttered office behind the kitchen. "Sit." "Down," Derek said, closing the door. Maya perched on the edge of the folding chair across from his desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking about yesterday," Derek began, his tone carefully neutral, "about your interaction with Mr. Stone." "Is there a problem?" Maya asked. He seemed satisfied with the service. "Joe, he was satisfied all right," Derek said, and there was something ugly in his voice. Maybe a little too satisfied, if you know what I mean. Maya frowned. "I don't understand." Derek leaned back in his chair, studying her with calculating eyes. "Look, Maya, I'm not stupid. I saw the way he was looking at you, the way you two were chatting like old friends. And that tip he left? Nobody tips $50 for pancakes and coffee unless they want something." Heat flooded Maya's cheeks. "It wasn't like that. Mr. Stone was just being kind." "Kind?" Derek laughed harshly. "Men like Alexander Stone aren't kind without expecting something in return. Trust me on this." Maya stood up, anger flaring in her chest. "You're wrong. He was a perfect gentleman." "Was he? Then why did he give you his business card?" Maya's blood ran cold. How did Derek know about that? Seeing her expression, Derek smiled smugly. "I saw him hand it to you. The question is, what does he want from you? Because let me tell you something, sweetheart. Men like that don't offer jobs to girls like you unless there are some very specific benefits involved." "That's disgusting," Maya said, her voice shaking with rage. "Not everyone is as twisted as you think they are." Derek's expression hardened. "Watch your tone with me, Maya. I'm trying to help you here. Whatever fantasy you've cooked up about Alexander Stone, you need to forget it. He's playing with you, and when he's done, you'll be right back here. If you're lucky enough that I let you keep your job." Maya stared at her manager in disbelief. The jealousy and resentment in his voice were unmistakable. Derek couldn't stand the thought that someone like Alexander Stone had shown interest in her, even if it was just professional. "Are we done here?" Maya asked coldly. "We're done when I say we're done," Derek snapped. "And I'm telling you right. Now if you so much as think about calling that number, you'll be looking for a new job. Do you understand me?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "Are you threatening to fire me for something I haven't even done?" "I'm protecting my business," Derek said. "You think Stone came in here by accident? He's probably planning to poach my best employees, steal my recipes, maybe even try to buy this place out from under me. And you're naive enough to help him do it." The accusation was so absurd that Maya almost laughed. Derek's paranoia was showing, and it wasn't a good look. "Mr. Stone ordered pancakes and left a tip," Maya said carefully. "That's all that happened." "Keep it that way," Derek warned, "because if I find out you've been in contact with him, you're gone. And good luck finding another job in this city with the kind of reference I'll give you." Maya left the office with her hands shaking and her heart pounding. Derek's threats were real. She'd seen him destroy other employees' reputations over far less. But the thought of never calling Alexander Stone, of letting this opportunity slip away without even knowing what it might be, made her feel sick. The morning shift dragged by, with Maya going through the motions of serving customers, while her mind churned over her impossible situation. She needed this job, couldn't afford to lose it, but she also couldn't stop thinking about the kindness, in Alexander's eyes, the way he'd treated her like she mattered. Around noon, during her break, Maya stepped outside into the alley behind the cafe and pulled out her phone. Alexander's business card felt warm in her fingers as she stared at his number. What did she have to lose? Derek was probably going to fire her eventually anyway. He'd made it clear he was just looking for an excuse. Before she could lose her nerve, Maya dialed the number. "Stone Enterprises, Mr. Stone's office," a professional female voice answered. "How may I help you?" "Hi, this is Maya Chen. Mr. Stone asked me to call him about a potential job opportunity." "Of course, Miss Chen. Mr. Stone has been expecting your call. Please hold while I connect you." Maya's heart hammered as soft classical music played in her ear. This was really happening. Alexander Stone had actually told his assistant to expect her call. "Maya." Alexander's voice came on the line, warm and familiar. "I'm glad you called. How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you. Though I have to admit I'm a bit nervous about calling." "No need to be nervous. I have a proposition for you, and I think you're going to like it. Are you free this afternoon to meet and discuss it?" Maya glanced back at the cafe, where Derek was probably watching the clock, ready to berate her if she was late coming back from break. "I get off work at 6. Would that be too late?" "6 is perfect. Do you know the Grand Hotel downtown? Meet me in the lobby at 6:30. "The Grand Hotel?" Maya's voice squeaked slightly. The Grand was the most expensive hotel in the city, the kind of place where she'd never even dreamed of setting foot. "Don't worry," Alexander said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "It's just a quiet place to talk. I'll see you at 6:30, Maya." After hanging up, Maya stood in the alley for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. In a few hours, she was going to meet Alexander Stone at the Grand Hotel to discuss a job that might change her entire life. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Maya went through the motions of serving customers, but her mind was entirely focused on the evening ahead. What should she wear? What kind of job was Alexander going to offer? And most importantly, was she brave enough to take it? At exactly 6 o'clock, Maya clocked out and hurried to the employee bathroom to change clothes. She'd brought her best outfit, a simple black dress that she'd worn to job interviews paired with her only decent shoes. It wasn't much, but it was clean and professional. Looking at herself in the mirror, Maya tried to calm her nerves. Her reflection showed a young woman with intelligent dark eyes and determined expression, dressed modestly but with dignity. She could do this. Whatever Alexander Stone wanted to offer her, she would listen with an open mind and make the best decision she could. The Grand Hotel was everything Maya had imagined and more. The lobby was a study in elegant luxury, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and fresh flowers everywhere. Maya felt completely out of place among the well-dressed guests, but she held her head high as she approached the concierge desk. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I'm supposed to meet Alexander Stone here at 6:30. The concierge's expression immediately became more attentive. "Of course. Mr. Stone is waiting for you in the Meridian Lounge, right through those doors." Maya followed his directions to a quiet lounge area with comfortable seating and soft lighting. Alexander was sitting in a corner booth, dressed more casually than he had been at the cafe, but still impeccably put together in dark slacks and a white button-down shirt. When he saw her, he stood and smiled. "Maya, thank you for coming. You look lovely." Thank you, Maya said, accepting his handshake and trying not to think about how her dress had cost less than his tie probably did. Please sit, Alexander said, gesturing to the booth. Can I order you something to drink? Coffee, wine? Just water, please, Maya said, settling into the plush seating. I'm still technically on duty tomorrow morning. Alexander signaled a server and ordered Maya's water and a scotch for himself, then turned his full attention to her. I imagine you're curious about why I asked you here. Very curious, Maya admitted. I can't figure out what you could possibly want with someone like me. Someone like you? Alexander raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? Maya gestured vaguely at their surroundings. Someone who doesn't belong in places like this. Someone with no experience, no connections, no credentials. Maya, Alexander said seriously, in the short time I observed you yesterday, I saw more intelligence, grace, and genuine character than I encounter in most of my business dealings. You treated difficult customers with patience. You gave me honest advice about the food. And you did your job with pride despite being undervalued and disrespected. Those are exactly the qualities I'm looking for. Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected praise. Looking for in what capacity? I need a personal assistant, Alexander said. Someone I can trust, someone with good judgment, someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth even when it might not be what I want to hear. The position would involve managing my calendar, handling correspondence, accompanying me to meetings and events, and generally helping me stay organized and focused on what matters most. Maya stared at him in shock. You want me to be your personal assistant, but I don't have any experience in that kind of work. Experience can be taught, Alexander said. Integrity and character cannot. Besides, you were studying business administration before you left school, weren't you? You understand the fundamentals. Mr. Stone, Maya said slowly, I appreciate the offer more than you know, but I have to ask, why me? You could have anyone you want for this position. People with degrees, with experience, with the right background. Alexander was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful and sincere. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people who only tell you what they think you want to hear? To never be sure if someone's being genuine or just trying to get something from you. I've been looking for someone real, someone who sees me as a person, rather than just a bank account or a stepping stone to something else. Yesterday, in that cafe, you treated me exactly the same way you treated every other customer, with professionalism and kindness. You didn't fawn over me or try to impress me. You were just yourself. That's rarer than you might think. Maya felt overwhelmed by his words. What would the salary be? $75,000 to start, with health insurance, vacation time, and performance bonuses. After 6 months, if things work out well, we'll discuss a raise. Maya's vision actually blurred for a moment. $75,000 was more than her parents made combined. It was enough to move them out of their cramped apartment, to get her father the medical care he needed, to maybe even go back to school part-time. There's just one thing, Maya said, forcing herself to be practical despite her excitement. My current manager has made it clear that if I pursue this opportunity, he'll fire me and give me a terrible reference. I can't afford to lose my current job unless I'm absolutely certain this one is real. Alexander's expression darkened. He threatened you. What exactly did he say? Maya related her conversation with Derek that morning, watching as Alexander's jaw tightened with each detail. That's completely unacceptable, Alexander said when she finished. No employer has the right to threaten an employee for exploring other opportunities. Maybe not, but he can still do it, Maya said, and if this doesn't work out, I'll be left with nothing. Alexander pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Jennifer, I need you to prepare an employment contract for Maya Chen. Personal assistant position, $75,000 starting salary, standard benefits package. I want it ready first thing tomorrow morning. Yes, that's right. Thank you. He hung up and looked at Maya. The contract will be ready tomorrow. You can review it, have a lawyer look at it if you want. Take whatever time you need to make your decision. But Maya, I want you to know that this offer is completely legitimate. I'm not playing games with you. And my current job? Don't give notice until you've signed the contract and we've agreed on a start date. If your manager causes problems for you in the meantime, call me immediately. I have lawyers who specialize in employment law. Maya nodded, still struggling to believe this was happening. When would you want me to start? As soon as possible. Would 2 weeks be enough notice for your current employer? More than enough, Maya said. Derek would probably be happy to see her go. Alexander reached across the table and covered her hand with his, the contact sending a warm jolt through her arm. Maya, I want you to understand something. This is a professional relationship, but I also hope we can be friends. I have a feeling you're going to change my life as much as I'm changing yours. Looking into his sincere gray-blue eyes, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't just about a job anymore. There was something happening between them, something that felt dangerous and wonderful at the same time. I should go, Maya said reluctantly. I have to work tomorrow and I need time to think about all this. Of course, but Maya, don't let anyone talk you out of this opportunity. You deserve better than what you've been settling for. As Maya walked home through the city streets, Alexander's words echoed in her mind. For the first time in her adult life, someone believed she was capable of more than just getting by. Someone saw potential in her that she'd almost forgotten existed. The question was, did she have the courage to reach for it? Maya spent 3 sleepless nights agonizing over Alexander's offer before finally making her decision. The contract arrived as promised, reviewed by her father's friend who was a retired lawyer, and found to be exactly what Alexander had described: legitimate, generous, and life-changing. On Thursday morning, Maya walked into Derek's office with her resignation letter and 2 weeks' notice. Her manager's reaction was exactly what she'd expected. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Derek said, his face red with anger. "Mark my words, Maya. You'll come crawling back here within a month begging for your old job, and I might not be feeling generous enough to give it to you." "I understand," Maya said calmly, though her heart was pounding. "Thank you for the opportunity to work here." "Don't thank me," Derek spat. "Thank me when you're out on the street with nothing to show for your stupidity." Maya left the office with her head held high, but Derek made sure her last 2 weeks at Morning Brew were miserable. He gave her the worst shifts, the most difficult customers, and criticized everything she did. Maya endured it all with quiet dignity, counting down the days until she could start her new life. Her first day at Stone Enterprises was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The building itself was a monument to success, 40 stories of gleaming steel and glass reaching toward the sky. Maya's reflection in the polished marble floors showed a young woman in a professional black suit, purchased with her signing bonus, carrying herself with as much confidence as she could muster. Alexander's office was on the 38th floor, accessible through a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. The woman behind the desk, Jennifer, Maya realized, was perfectly put together in the way that only came with expensive clothes and professional styling. "You must be Maya," Jennifer said with a warm smile. "I'm Jennifer Williams, Mr. Stone's executive assistant. I'll be training you for the first few weeks." "Thank you," Maya said, shaking her offered hand. "I appreciate your patience. I know I have a lot to learn." "Don't worry about that. Mr. Stone chose you for good reasons, and I can see why. You have excellent posture and presence. That's more important than you might think in this business." Jennifer led Maya through a set of double doors into Alexander's private office, and Maya had to suppress a gasp. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Alexander's desk was a masterpiece of dark wood and clean lines, positioned to take advantage of the natural light. "Maya," Alexander said, rising from behind his desk with a genuine smile, "welcome to Stone Enterprises. You look perfect." Maya felt heat flood her cheeks at the compliment. Alexander himself looked even more impressive in his natural environment, commanding, confident, every inch the successful billionaire. But when he looked at her, she still saw the same warmth that had drawn her to him in the cafe. "Thank you, Mr. Stone. I'm excited to get started." "Alexander," he corrected gently, "we're going to be working closely together. Formality will just get in the way." The next few hours were a whirlwind of information as Jennifer walked Maya through her new responsibilities. She would manage Alexander's calendar, handle his correspondence, screen his calls, prepare materials for meetings, and accompany him to various business functions. It was overwhelming but also thrilling. The key, Jennifer explained as they sat in Maya's new office, a space that was larger and more elegant than anywhere Maya had ever worked, is to anticipate Mr. Stone's needs before he has to ask. He's brilliant, but he's also incredibly busy. Your job is to make his life easier, so he can focus on the big picture. What's he like to work for? Maya asked. Jennifer considered the question carefully. He's demanding but fair. He expects excellence, but he's also patient when you're learning. He treats everyone with respect, from the janitors to the board members, and he's fiercely loyal to people who prove themselves trustworthy. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into her new role with determination and enthusiasm. She arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed everything Jennifer taught her like a sponge. Gradually, she began to understand the rhythm of Alexander's days, the patterns of his preferences, the subtle cues that indicated his mood or stress level. Alexander, for his part, was an ideal boss. He was patient with her mistakes, appreciative of her efforts, and increasingly willing to trust her with important responsibilities. Maya found herself looking forward to their interactions. The brief meetings where they'd go over his schedule, the moments when he'd ask for her opinion on correspondence, the times when he'd share a story about a difficult client or a successful deal. But it wasn't just professional. There were moments of connection that felt deeper, more personal. Like the morning when Alexander arrived looking exhausted, and Maya quietly brought him his favorite coffee and made sure his first meeting was pushed back 30 minutes so he could collect himself. Or the afternoon when Maya was struggling with a particularly complex travel arrangement, and Alexander sat down beside her to help work through the logistics, their shoulders brushing as they leaned over her computer. The attraction between them was becoming impossible to ignore, though neither of them acknowledged it directly. Maya told herself it was just gratitude. Of course, she felt drawn to the man who had changed her life. And surely Alexander's kindness was simply his natural way of treating employees. But the looks that passed between them, the way conversations would trail off when their eyes met, the careful way they avoided unnecessary physical contact, it all suggested something more complicated than a simple boss-employee relationship. 3 months into her new job, Maya's life had transformed completely. She'd moved her parents into a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. Her father was receiving the medical care he needed, and Maya herself was living in a small but lovely studio apartment near downtown. She'd even started taking night classes, working toward finishing her business degree. But with success came new challenges. Maya's growing confidence and obvious intelligence hadn't gone unnoticed by other people in Alexander's circle, and not all of them were pleased with her rapid rise. "Who is this girl anyway?" Maya overheard Victoria Sterling say at a company reception. Victoria was the daughter of one of Alexander's business partners, a stunning blonde who'd been pursuing Alexander for years with increasing desperation. "Some waitress he picked up at a coffee shop," replied Marcus Hawthorne, a junior partner who'd been passed over when Maya was hired. "No education, no connections, no class. I have no idea what Alexander sees in her." "It's obvious what he sees in her," Victoria said with venom. "She's young, she's available, and she worships him. Men are so predictable." Maya felt sick hearing their assessment of her relationship with Alexander. Was that really how people saw her? As some kind of gold digger who'd seduced her way into a job she didn't deserve? The whispers and speculation only got worse as Maya became more visible in Alexander's professional life. She accompanied him to board meetings, client dinners, and industry events, always professional but increasingly confident in her role. The business world was small and gossipy, and Maya could feel people watching her, judging her, waiting for her to fail. "You're doing excellent work," Alexander told her one evening as they worked late, preparing for a major presentation. "I hope you know how much I appreciate your dedication." "Thank you," Maya said, but her voice lacked its usual warmth. Alexander looked up from the documents they were reviewing, studying her expression. "Is everything all right? You seem different." Lately, Maya hesitated, then decided to be honest. "People are talking, Alexander. About us. About why you hired me, about whether I deserve this position. Alexander's jaw tightened. What kind of things are they saying? That I'm just a waitress who doesn't belong in this world, that you hired me for reasons that have nothing to do with my qualifications. Maya couldn't bring herself to repeat Victoria's more personal accusations. Maya, Alexander said firmly, anyone who knows me understands that I don't make business decisions based on personal attraction. You were hired because you're intelligent, hard-working, and trustworthy. Your performance over the past 3 months has proven that I made the right choice. But what if they're not entirely wrong? Maya asked quietly. What if there is something between us that's affecting our professional relationship? The question hung in the air between them, finally acknowledging what they'd both been feeling, but neither had been willing to name. Alexander was quiet. For a long moment, his grey-blue eyes searching her face. Maya, he said finally, I won't lie to you. What I feel for you goes beyond professional respect. But I would never let personal feelings compromise your career or mine. You've earned every opportunity you've been given. Maya felt her heart racing at his admission. Alexander, Maya! Jennifer's voice interrupted from the outer office. Your father's online too, he says it's urgent. Maya's blood ran cold. Her father never called her at work unless something was seriously wrong. She grabbed the phone with shaking hands. Dad, what's happening? Maya, sweetheart. Her father's voice was weak and scared. I'm at the hospital. I collapsed at home and your mother called an ambulance, the doctors say. They say it's my heart. It's not good, Maya. The world seemed to tilt around Maya. She gripped the phone tighter, trying to stay focused. Which hospital? I'm coming right now. St. Mary's, but Maya, don't leave work for this. I know how important your job is. Dad, stop, Maya said firmly. I'm on my way. She hung up and turned to find Alexander already putting on his jacket. Come on, he said. I'll drive you. Alexander, you don't have to. I'm not letting you drive when you're this upset. And I'm not letting you go through this alone. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of city lights and anxious silence. Maya sat rigidly in the passenger seat of Alexander's Mercedes, her hands clenched in her lap, trying not to think about the worst-case scenarios running through her mind. At the hospital, Alexander stayed by her side as she spoke with doctors, held her hand during the terrifying wait for test results, and quietly made arrangements for the best cardiac specialists in the city to consult on her father's case. He didn't make a big deal of his involvement, didn't act like he was doing anything extraordinary, but Maya understood the magnitude of his support. Her father stabilized after emergency surgery, but the doctors were clear that his condition was serious. He would need ongoing treatment, possibly more surgery, and definitely lifestyle changes that would affect his ability to work. The important thing is that he's alive, Maya told herself as she sat by his hospital bed the next morning, watching him sleep. But she couldn't shake the fear that this was just the beginning of a long, expensive medical battle. Alexander appeared, in the doorway carrying coffee and breakfast from the hospital cafeteria. He'd stayed the night, despite Maya's protests that he should go home and get some rest. How is he? Alexander asked quietly, setting the food on the bedside table. Stable. The surgery went well, but there's a lot of damage to his heart. The doctor says he'll need at least 6 months of recovery time, maybe more. Alexander nodded, pulling up a chair beside her. Whatever he needs, Maya, don't worry about the cost. I can't let you pay for my father's medical bills, Maya said automatically. You're not letting me do anything. I'm offering because I want to help, because you matter to me. The simple statement hit Maya like a physical blow. In the sterile hospital room, with her father's life hanging in the balance, Alexander's words carried a weight that made her chest tight with emotion. Alexander, she whispered, turning to look at him. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Just let me be here for you. Maya reached for his hand, twining their fingers together. For the first time since the phone call, she felt like she could breathe properly. I should call in to work, Maya said after a moment. Let Jennifer know I won't be in today. Already taken care of, Alexander said. I cleared both of our schedules. Nothing is more important than this. Maya stared at him in amazement. You cleared your schedule? Alexander, you have that presentation to the Morrison Group this afternoon. You've been preparing for weeks. Marcus can handle it. It's time he stepped up anyway. But this deal is worth millions. Maya, Alexander interrupted gently, nothing is more important than the people we care about. The business will survive one postponed meeting. Your father might not survive me abandoning you when you need support. The casual way he included himself in her family crisis, the assumption that of course he would prioritize her needs over his business obligations, left Maya speechless. This wasn't just kindness from a generous boss. This was something much deeper, much more personal. I love you, she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I know I shouldn't. I know it complicates everything, but I do. I love you. Alexander's expression shifted, becoming more intense, more focused. Maya, you don't have to say anything, Maya said quickly. I just needed you to know. After last night, after everything you've done, I couldn't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just professional respect. Alexander brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. Maya, I've been in love with you since that first morning in the cafe. When you looked at me like I was just another customer, when you told me the truth about the omelettes, when you served difficult customers with grace, even though they treated you terribly, that's when I knew you were extraordinary. Then why didn't you say anything? Maya asked. Because I didn't want you to feel pressured. Because I wanted you to have time to find your footing in your new life before dealing with the complications of us. And because I was terrified that once you really understood my world, you'd decide you didn't want any part of it. Maya studied his face, seeing vulnerability there that she'd never noticed before. What do you mean? Alexander was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. There are things about my life, about my family, that aren't what they appear on the surface. Things that could put you in danger if certain people found out how much you mean to me. What kind of things? Maya asked, though she wasn't sure. She wanted to know the answer. Before Alexander could respond, Maya's mother appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears and her clothes disheveled from the long night at the hospital. Maya, she said, rushing toward the bed. How is he? Is he going to be okay? Maya stood and embraced her mother, letting herself be strong and reassuring even though she was scared too. He's stable, Mom. The surgery went well. He's going to recover. As Maya comforted her mother and updated her on the doctor's reports, she was aware of Alexander quietly slipping out of the room to give them privacy. But his words stayed with her, creating new questions and concerns that she knew would have to be addressed soon. What secrets was Alexander keeping, and what did it mean for their future together? 3 weeks after her father's heart attack, Maya was finally beginning to feel like her life was returning to some semblance of normal. Her father was recovering steadily. Her mother had stopped crying every time someone mentioned the hospital, and Maya was back to working full-time at Stone Enterprises. But things between her and Alexander had shifted since their mutual confession of love. They were more careful around each other, more aware of the undercurrent of attraction that now hummed openly between them. Alexander had insisted on paying for all of her father's medical expenses, despite Maya's continued protests, and he'd arranged for the best cardiac rehabilitation program in the state. You're spoiling us, Maya told him one evening as they worked late in his office, reviewing contracts for a new development project. I'm taking care of the people I love, Alexander replied simply, not looking up from his documents. That's what people do. The casual way he said it, the people I love, made Maya's heart skip. They hadn't talked about their relationship, beyond that moment in the hospital, hadn't defined what they were to each other, or discussed what the future might hold. But the love was there, present in every interaction, every glance, every small kindness. Maya was so focused on the warmth spreading through her chest at Alexander's words that she almost missed the knock on the office door. Jennifer had left hours ago, and the building was mostly empty except for security. I'll get it, Maya said, walking toward the door. Actually, let me, Alexander said, standing abruptly. There was something in his voice, a tension that hadn't been there moments before. But Maya had already opened the door, and she found herself facing a woman she didn't recognize. The stranger was probably in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. and the kind of understated expensive clothing that whispered old money. But it was her eyes that caught Maya's attention. They were the same unusual grey-blue as Alexander's. "Well," the woman said, her gaze moving from Maya to Alexander with obvious disapproval. "I can see why you haven't been returning my calls." "Mother," Alexander said, and Maya heard resignation and something that might have been fear in his voice. "This is unexpected." "Mother." Maya felt her stomach drop as she looked between Alexander and the elegant woman in the doorway. This was Eleanor Stone, Alexander's mother, and she was clearly not pleased to find Maya in her son's office at 8 o'clock in the evening. Unexpected. Eleanor stepped into the office without being invited, her sharp gaze taking in the intimate scene. Maya and Alexander working alone together, their jackets hung on the same chair, the obvious familiarity between them. "Alexander, we need to talk. Privately." Maya felt heat flood her cheeks. She gathered her things quickly, avoiding eye contact with either of them. "I should go anyway, it's getting late." "Maya, wait," Alexander said, but his mother's voice cut across his. "Yes, Maya, isn't it? I think that would be best." The dismissal was polite, but unmistakable. Maya nodded stiffly and headed for the door, but Eleanor's next words stopped her cold. "Though I suppose we should talk soon, my dear. There are things you need to understand about your situation." Maya turned back, confused and increasingly uncomfortable. "My situation?" Eleanor smiled, but it wasn't a kind expression. "About what it means to be involved with my son, about the family you think you might be joining." "Mother, that's enough," Alexander said sharply. "Maya doesn't need to hear this from you." "On the contrary," Eleanor replied smoothly. "I think she needs to hear it very much. Better now than later, when it's too late to make a clean break." Maya looked at Alexander, seeing something like panic in his expression. "What is she talking about?" "It's complicated," Alexander said, but his mother laughed. "Complicated? Is that what we're calling it now?" Eleanor turned back to Maya. "Tell me, dear, what do you know about the Stone family, about how we built our fortune?" I know Alexander runs a successful development company," Maya said carefully. "I know you're one of the wealthiest families in the city." "Development company," Eleanor repeated with amusement. "How charmingly naive. Alexander, you really haven't told her anything, have you?" "Told me what?" Maya demanded, fear beginning to creep into her voice. Alexander ran his hands through his hair, looking more rattled than Maya had ever seen him. "Maya, maybe we should have this conversation somewhere else, somewhere private." "Oh, I think here is perfect," Eleanor said, settling into one of the leather chairs across from Alexander's desk. "Maya, darling, has Alexander mentioned that our family has certain connections, certain obligations that come with the Stone name?" Maya looked between them, utterly lost. "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me." Eleanor sighed. "Dramatically. The Stone family has been in business for 4 generations, Maya. Not just legitimate business, mind you. We've had to make certain compromises, certain alliances to build and maintain our position." "What kind of compromises?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "Mother, stop," Alexander said firmly. "This isn't how I wanted Maya to find out." "Find out what?" Maya's voice was rising now, panic creeping in around the edges. Eleanor ignored her son's warning and continued. "The Stone family has been connected to certain organized crime families for decades, Maya. Money laundering, protection rackets, legitimate businesses that provide cover for less legitimate activities. It's how we've been able to grow so quickly, to outbid our competitors, to make problems disappear when necessary." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "You're lying." "I'm afraid she's not," Alexander said quietly, and his admission hit Maya like a physical blow. "Alexander," Maya whispered, staring at him in horror. "Tell me this isn't true." Alexander's silence was answer enough. Maya sank into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "Oh my God. Oh my God. You're criminals." "We prefer to think of ourselves as pragmatists," Eleanor said calmly. "The construction industry is incredibly competitive, Maya. Sometimes you need to be willing to bend the rules to stay ahead." Bend the rules? Maya's voice cracked. You're talking about organized crime, about the mob. Such an ugly word, Eleanor said with distaste. We're talking about business partnerships that have been mutually beneficial for everyone involved. Maya turned to Alexander, desperate for him to deny it, to explain that his mother was lying or exaggerating. But she saw the truth in his expression, the guilt, the regret, the fear of losing her. How could you not tell me? Maya asked, her voice breaking. How could you let me fall in love with you without knowing who you really are? Because I knew you'd react exactly like this, Alexander said miserably. I knew you'd see me differently and I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. So you lied to me instead. I never lied to you. I just didn't tell you everything. Maya laughed bitterly. That's the same thing, Alexander. You let me believe you were someone you're not. I am exactly who you think I am, Alexander insisted, moving toward her. The family business doesn't define me, Maya. What I feel for, you, the way I've treated you, the person I am when I'm with you, that's all real. Is it? Maya stood up, backing away from him. How can I trust anything you've told me? How can I trust my own judgment when I was so completely wrong about the man I thought I loved? Maya, please, Alexander said desperately. Let me explain. Everything. Let me tell you the whole story. What whole story? Maya demanded. How you're involved with criminals. How the money you used to pay my father's medical bills came from illegal activities. How every gift you've given me, every kindness you've shown me is tainted with blood money. It's not like that, Alexander said, but Maya wasn't listening anymore. I have to go, she said, gathering her purse and heading for the door. I can't. I need time to think. Maya, don't leave like this, Alexander pleaded, following her. Let me take you home. Let me explain. No, Maya said firmly, turning to face him at the elevator. I need space, Alexander. I need to figure out what this means, what I'm going to do. What you're going to do about what? Maya looked at him sadly. About us, about my job, about whether I can stay in a life that's built on lies and criminal connections. Maya, Eleanor's voice came from behind them, and Maya turned to see Alexander's mother watching the scene with obvious satisfaction. Before you make any dramatic decisions, you should understand something. Now that you know our family's secrets, you've become a liability. People in our position can't afford to have loose ends walking around with dangerous information. The threat was delivered in such a cultured, civilized tone that it took Maya a moment to process what Eleanor was actually saying. Are you threatening me? Maya asked incredulously. I'm explaining reality to you, Eleanor replied. You now know things that could destroy our family and hurt a lot of innocent people. That puts you in a very precarious position. Alexander stepped between Maya and his mother, his expression furious. Mother, that's enough. Mother, that's enough. Maya is not a threat to anyone, and if you or anyone else in the family so much as thinks about hurting her— Oh, Alexander, Eleanor said with amusement, you think you can protect her? You think your feelings for this little waitress are more important than family loyalty? Yes, Alexander said without hesitation. Maya means more to me than any of this. More than the business, more than the family, more than anything. Eleanor's expression hardened. Then you're a fool, and foolishness in our family gets people killed. Maya felt sick. This couldn't be happening. 3 hours ago she'd been a woman in love with a successful businessman, planning a future filled with possibility and hope. Now she was standing in the middle of what sounded like a crime family power struggle, with her life potentially in danger because she'd learned too much. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and Maya stepped inside without another word. Alexander moved to follow her, but she held up her hand to stop him. Don't, she said, tears streaming down her face. Please, Alexander, I need time to process this. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. Maya, I love you, Alexander said desperately as the elevator doors began to close. Whatever else is true, that's real. The doors shut, leaving Maya alone with her reflection and the ruins of everything she'd thought she knew. As the elevator descended, she leaned against the wall and let the tears come freely. How had she been? So blind? How had she fallen so completely for a man whose entire life was built on deception and criminal activity? By the time Maya reached the lobby, she'd made a decision. She couldn't go home. Not yet. She needed somewhere to think, somewhere to process what had just happened, and figure out what she was going to do next. Without really planning it, she found herself walking toward the only place that felt familiar anymore. The Morning Brew. Cafe. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, just a few students with laptops and an elderly man reading a newspaper. Derek wasn't working the evening shift, which Maya was grateful for. She didn't think she could handle his smug satisfaction at seeing her back in his domain. Maya. Stacy looked up from behind the counter with surprise. "What are you doing here? You look terrible." "Thanks," Maya said with a weak laugh. "Could I get a coffee? And maybe somewhere quiet to sit?" "Of course, on the house." Stacy poured a large coffee and handed it over with genuine concern. "Are you okay? You're shaking." Maya looked down at her hands and realized Stacy was right. I found out some things tonight that changed everything I thought I knew about my life." "Want to talk about it?" Maya considered the offer, but how could she explain that the man she loved was connected to organized crime, that she'd unknowingly become part of a world where people made problems disappear, that her dream job had turned into a nightmare that might actually put her life in danger? "I don't think I can," Maya said finally, "but thank you." She found a quiet corner booth and sat nursing her coffee, trying to make sense of everything Eleanor had revealed. The Stone family had connections to organized crime. Alexander had known this when he hired her, when he pursued her, when he told her he loved her. Every moment of their relationship had been built on this fundamental deception. But even as Maya tried to hold on to her anger, she couldn't forget the way Alexander had looked at her in the hospital, the genuine care in his voice when he talked about taking care of the people he loved. Could someone fake that kind of tenderness? Could criminal connections really negate everything good she'd seen in him? Maya was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man approaching her table until he was standing right beside her booth. Maya Chen? She looked up to find a middle-aged man in a rumpled suit, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen too much of the world's ugly side. There was something about his manner, alert, cautious, official, that made Maya's stomach clench with new anxiety. "Yes," she said carefully. The man pulled out a badge and showed it to her briefly. "Detective Ray Martinez, Organized Crime Unit. I was hoping we could have a conversation." Maya's blood turned to ice. "About what?" Detective Martinez slid into the booth across from her without being invited. "About Alexander Stone. About the Stone family's business practices. About what you might have seen or heard during your time as Alexander's personal assistant. I don't know what you're talking about," Maya said automatically, but Martinez smiled grimly. "Ms. Chen, we know you just left Stone Enterprises after what appeared to be a very emotional confrontation with Alexander and his mother. We know you've been working closely with Alexander for several months, with access to his calendar, his correspondence, his private meetings. We also know that the Stone family has been under federal investigation for money laundering and racketeering for the past 2 years." Maya stared at him in shock. "Federal investigation? You seem surprised. Did you really think a family, with their kind of rapid expansion, their ability to consistently outbid competitors, their connections to certain questionable construction unions, wouldn't attract law enforcement attention?" Maya's mind reeled. "Are you saying Alexander is going to be arrested?" "That depends," Martinez said, leaning forward, "on what evidence we can gather, on what witnesses are willing to testify, on whether people who have inside knowledge are willing to cooperate with our investigation." The implication was crystal clear. Detective Martinez wanted her to spy on Alexander, to provide evidence that could be used to prosecute him and his family. "I can't do that," Maya said immediately. "Whatever else is true, I can't betray Alexander like that. Even though he's been lying to you for months, even though he's involved in criminal activities that have hurt innocent people." "You don't understand," Maya protested. "Alexander isn't like that. He's kind, he's generous, he cares about people." "Maya," Detective Martinez interrupted gently, "I've been investigating organized crime for 15 years. I've seen a lot of charming, generous criminals who were beloved by their families. And communities. That doesn't change the fact that they're criminals. Maya felt tears threatening again. What exactly are you asking me to do? Go back to work. Act normal. Pay attention to meetings, phone calls, documents that cross your desk. Help us build a case that will put these people away before they can hurt anyone else. And if I refuse? Martinez's expression softened slightly. Then you refuse. We can't force you to cooperate, Maya. But I will tell you this. The Stone family doesn't let people walk away once they know too much. Eleanor Stone's veiled threats tonight. Those weren't empty words. You're in danger whether you help us or not. The only question is whether you're going to help us make sure Alexander and his family can't hurt anyone else. Maya sat in stunned silence, processing this new layer of nightmare. Not only had she discovered that the man she loved was a criminal, but now law enforcement wanted her to help destroy him. And according to Martinez, she was in physical danger, regardless of what she chose to do. I need time to think, Maya said finally. Martinez nodded and pulled out a business card. Call me when you're ready to talk. But Maya, don't wait too long. People in your position tend to have short life expectancies once the family decides they're a liability. After the detective left, Maya sat alone in the cafe booth, staring at his business card and feeling more lost than she had since her father's death. Every choice in front of her seemed impossible. If she helped the FBI, she'd be betraying the man she loved. If she didn't, she might be enabling criminals to continue hurting people. And according to both Eleanor Stone and Detective Martinez, her life was in danger no matter what she decided. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message, startling her out of her dark thoughts. The message was from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the warehouse on 5th Street. Come alone. A friend. Maya stared at the cryptic message, her heart pounding. Who could this be from? How did they get her number and what did they want? Against every instinct of self-preservation, Maya found herself walking toward 5th Street 20 minutes later. The warehouse district was mostly deserted at this hour. With only a few security lights cutting through the darkness, Maya's footsteps echoed on the empty sidewalk as she approached the address from the text. The warehouse appeared to be abandoned, with boarded windows and a rusted fire escape. But there was a light on in what looked like an office on the 2nd floor. Maya pushed through the heavy front door, which was unlocked, and climbed a set of metal stairs toward the light. "Hello," she called out as she reached the 2nd floor. "Is someone here?" "Maya." A woman's voice came from the lit office, and Maya stepped through the doorway to find herself face to face with someone she never expected to see again. Victoria Sterling sat behind a battered desk, looking nothing like the perfectly polished socialite Maya remembered from company events. Her usually immaculate blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater instead. To have designer clothes, and there was something different about her entire demeanor. Less artificial, more real. "Victoria," Maya said in confusion. "What are you doing here? How did you get my number?" Victoria stood up, and Maya noticed she was holding a gun casually at her side. Maya's blood turned to ice. "Sit down, Maya," Victoria said, gesturing to a folding chair across from the desk. "We have a lot to talk about." "Victoria, what is this about? Why do you have a gun?" "Because my life depends on it," Victoria said grimly. "Just like yours does." "Now sit down and let me tell you what's really going on." Maya remained standing, every muscle in her body tensed to run. "I'm not sitting anywhere until you tell me what this is about." Victoria sighed and set the gun on the desk, keeping her hands visible. "Fine, Maya. Everything you think you know about the Stone family, about Alexander, about me, it's all wrong. I'm not who you think I am." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not Victoria Sterling, spoiled socialite. I'm Agent Victoria Sterling, FBI, and I've been undercover for the past 3 years trying to build a case against the Stone family." Maya felt the world tilt around her. "You're FBI?" "Deep cover. My job was to get close to Alexander, to gain the family's trust, to gather evidence of their criminal activities. But things got complicated when you showed up." "Complicated how?" Victoria ran her hands through her hair, looking exhausted. Because Alexander fell in love with you for real, Maya, not as part of some scheme, not to manipulate you or use you. He genuinely loves you, which means he's been protecting you from the family's more dangerous activities. Maya sank into the folding chair, overwhelmed. I don't understand any of this. The Stone family isn't just connected to organized crime, Maya. They are organized crime, masquerading as a legitimate business. Eleanor Stone is one of the most ruthless crime bosses on the East Coast. She's ordered the deaths of at least a dozen people over the past 5 years, including business competitors, former associates who tried to leave the family, and law enforcement officials who got too close. And Alexander, Victoria's expression softened slightly. That's where it gets complicated. Alexander was born into this family, raised in this world, but he's been trying to go legitimate for years. Most of his recent business deals have been completely legal. He's been gradually distancing himself from the family's criminal activities, trying to find a way out. Then why didn't he tell me the truth? Because telling you the truth would have put you in immediate danger, Victoria explained. As long as you were ignorant, Eleanor could dismiss you as Alexander's harmless infatuation. But once you knew about the family business, you became a liability that needed to be eliminated. Maya felt sick. So Eleanor really was threatening me tonight. Eleanor has killed people for knowing less than what you learned tonight, Victoria confirmed, which is why we need to get you out of here. Now. What do you mean? Victoria stood up and began packing items from the desk into a bag. My cover was blown tonight when Eleanor saw me talking to Detective Martinez outside the Stone building. She knows I'm FBI, which means she knows this whole investigation is about to come crashing down on them. She's going to start eliminating threats, starting with you. Maya's phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Alexander. Maya, where are you? My mother has people looking for you. You're in danger. Please call me. Victoria glanced at the message and cursed. They're already mobilizing. Maya, we need to leave. Right now. Where are we going? Somewhere safe while we figure out our next move. The FBI has a safe house. Victoria was interrupted by the sound of car doors slamming outside the warehouse. She grabbed her gun and moved to the window, cursing again when she saw what was waiting for them. What is it? Maya asked. 3 black SUVs, Eleanor's cleanup crew. Victoria turned back to Maya with grim determination. Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're about to be in a life or death situation, and there's something else you need to know before we try to get out of here. What now? Maya demanded, feeling like she couldn't process any more revelations. Victoria met her eyes with an expression Maya had never seen before, not the jealous socialite she'd thought she knew, but a trained federal agent preparing for battle. Maya, Eleanor Stone isn't just Alexander's mother. She's your mother too. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. What did you say? 23 years ago, Eleanor Stone had an affair with a man named David Chen. When she got pregnant, she gave the baby up for adoption to protect her marriage and her position in the family. That baby was you, Maya. Eleanor Stone is your biological mother, and Alexander Stone is your half-brother. Maya felt the world explode around her. Everything, her job, her relationship with Alexander, the love she'd thought was real, it was all based on the most twisted lie imaginable. No, Maya whispered. That can't be true. I'm sorry, Maya. The DNA tests we ran confirmed it. That's why Eleanor was so hostile to you tonight. She recognized you the moment she saw you, even though you don't know who she really is. She's been trying to figure out how to handle the situation without Alexander finding out the truth. Maya doubled over, feeling like she was going to vomit. She'd been in love with her half-brother. She'd been romantically involved with someone who shared her DNA. The horror of it was almost too much to process. Maya, I know this is devastating, but we need to move, Victoria said urgently. Eleanor's people are surrounding the building. If we're going to survive this, we need to get out now. Heavy footsteps echoed on the metal stairs, and Victoria moved toward a fire escape window at the back of the office. This way, stay low, and do exactly what I tell you. As Maya followed Victoria toward the window, her phone buzzed with one final message from Alexander. Maya, my mother just told me the truth about who you are. I'm coming for you. Don't trust anyone until I get there. I love you, and we'll figure this out together." Maya stared at the message in horror. Alexander knew. He knew they were siblings, and he was still saying he loved her. What did that mean? Was the entire Stone family more twisted than she'd ever imagined? "Maya, now!" Victoria hissed, already halfway through the window, as gunfire erupted somewhere. In the warehouse below them, Maya realized that discovering the truth about her parentage was only the beginning of her nightmare. Now she had to survive long enough to figure out what it all meant, and whether the love she'd thought was real could ever be anything other than a twisted lie. The shocking truth was out, but Maya's story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Maya stood at the window of her small apartment in Portland, watching rain streak down the glass. The FBI had relocated her after that night at the warehouse, giving her a new identity and a chance to start over somewhere Eleanor Stone's reach couldn't touch her. Victoria, whose real name was Agent Sarah Mills, had survived the shootout and successfully brought down the Stone crime family. Eleanor was facing life in prison on RICO charges, and most of her associates had been arrested or killed in the subsequent federal raids. But Alexander had escaped. According to Sarah, he'd vanished the night Maya disappeared, taking nothing but a bag of clothes and several $1 million from accounts his mother didn't know about. The FBI believed he'd fled the country, possibly to start a new life somewhere. Without extradition treaties, Maya tried not to think about him. The love she'd felt had been real, but it had been built on a lie so fundamental that it poisoned everything they'd shared. How could she ever separate her feelings for the man she'd thought he was from the horror of discovering they shared a mother? The therapist the FBI had provided said it would take time to heal from the trauma of that discovery. Maya was working on it, taking things one day at a time, trying to build a life that wasn't defined by the twisted legacy of the Stone family. She'd enrolled in college again, using her real name, Maya Chen, for the first time in months. She was studying social work, hoping to help other people who'd been caught up in situations beyond their control. It felt like a way to make meaning from the chaos her life had become. Maya was making coffee in her small kitchen when someone knocked on her apartment door. She froze, her heart immediately racing. The FBI had assured her that her new location was secure, that Eleanor's remaining associates had no way to find her. But the trauma of that night in the warehouse had left Maya with hypervigilance that probably would never fully fade. She approached the door cautiously and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, but he was wearing a baseball cap pulled low and she couldn't see his face clearly. "Who is it?" Maya called through the door. "Maya, it's me. Please open the door." The voice made Maya's knees weak. She knew that voice, had heard it in her dreams every night for 6 months. "Alexander! Alexander!" she whispered. "Please, Maya, I know you have every reason to hate me, but I need to see you. There are things you don't know, things I need to tell you." Maya's hands shook as she reached for the locks. Every rational part of her mind screamed that she should call the FBI, that Alexander was dangerous, that seeing him would only reopen wounds that were barely beginning to heal. But when she opened the door and saw his face, thinner than she remembered, with new lines of exhaustion and pain around his eyes, her heart betrayed her completely. "Hello, Maya," Alexander said softly. "You look beautiful." "You shouldn't be here," Maya said, but she stepped back to let him into her apartment anyway. "The FBI is looking for you. I know, I've been very careful." Alexander closed the door behind him and stood awkwardly in her small living room, looking as out of place as she'd once felt in his world of luxury. "What do you want, Alexander?" "I want to tell you the truth, all of it, because the story you heard that night about us being siblings, it's not complete." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Alexander ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she remembered all too well. "Maya, Eleanor Stone is not your mother." The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Maya stared at Alexander, unable to process what he'd just said. "What?" She lied. To Agent Mills, to the FBI, to everyone. "She's not your biological mother, Maya. She made up that story to destroy what we had together, to make sure you'd never come back to me." Maya sank onto her couch, her legs unable to support her anymore. How do you know that? Because I know who your real mother is, Alexander said gently, and I know why Eleanor was so desperate to separate us. Tell me. Alexander sat down beside her, careful not to touch her, but close enough that she could see the sincerity in his grey-blue eyes. Your mother's name was Sarah Chen. She worked as a housekeeper for the Stone family 24 years ago, when I was just a child. She was beautiful, kind, intelligent, everything Eleanor pretended to be but never was. My father fell in love with her. Maya felt tears starting to flow. Your father had an affair with my mother? More than that, he was planning to leave. Eleanor for her. He was going to divorce my mother, marry Sarah, and try to go legitimate with a small portion of the family money. But Eleanor found out. What happened? Alexander's expression darkened with old pain. Eleanor had Sarah killed, made it look like a car accident. But Sarah was pregnant at the time. Pregnant with you. The doctors were able to save you, even though your mother died. Eleanor arranged for you to be placed with a family she could keep track of, the Chens, so she could monitor you as you grew up. Maya stared at him in horror. Eleanor murdered my mother. Yes. And she's been watching you your entire life, making sure you never got too successful, never came to the attention of people who might recognize your resemblance to my father. When I found you at that cafe, when I fell in love with you, Eleanor realized that her carefully constructed lie was about to fall apart. So she told Agent Mills that she was my mother to make sure I'd never come back to you. Exactly. She knew that if you believed we were siblings, you'd be so horrified that you'd never question the story. You'd disappear and never look back. Maya felt overwhelmed by this new revelation. But how do you know all this? How can you be sure? Alexander reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Because before my father died, he left me a letter explaining everything. He also left DNA samples, photographs, documents, everything needed to prove that Sarah Chen was your mother and that Eleanor was her killer. Maya took the envelope with shaking hands. Why didn't he tell the truth while he was alive? Because Eleanor would have killed him too, and probably me. My father was many things, Maya, but he wasn't stupid. He knew that crossing Eleanor meant death. And now? Now, Eleanor is in federal prison for the rest of her life, and her organization, Fez destroyed. The truth can finally come out. Maya opened the envelope and found herself looking at photographs of a woman who looked exactly like her. Same dark hair, same intelligent eyes, same gentle smile. There were love letters between her mother and Alexander's father, DNA test, results, and a handwritten confession from Alexander's father detailing Eleanor's crimes. Maya, Alexander said softly, I know this doesn't undo the pain of the past 6 months. I know you may never be able to forgive me for not telling you the truth about my family from the beginning, but I needed you to know that what we felt for each other was real and right and pure. We're not siblings. Eleanor lied about that to destroy us. Maya looked up at him through her tears. Why should I believe you now? How do I know this isn't another elaborate lie? Because I love you enough to tell you the truth, even though it might not change anything between us, Alexander said, simply. Because I've spent 6 months in hell knowing that you thought I was your brother, knowing that you were somewhere in the world believing that our love was twisted and wrong. I couldn't live with that lie anymore. Maya studied his face, seeing the same honesty and vulnerability that had drawn her to him in the first place. But so much had happened, so much trust had been broken. Alexander, even if this is all true, even if we're not related, how can we ever get past everything else? Your family's criminal activities, the lies, the danger. We can't, Alexander said quietly. Not completely. The past will always be part of our story. But Maya, I've spent the last 6 months liquidating every asset I inherited from the Stone family fortune. I've donated it all to victims of organized crime, to families destroyed by people like my mother. I have nothing left except money I earned legitimately, and it's enough for us to start over somewhere new. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you, Maya Chen. I'm saying that if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, to give us another chance, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of that forgiveness." Maya looked at this man who had turned her world upside down, who had given her everything and then taken it all away, who was now offering her a future she'd never dared to dream of again. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said honestly. "I don't know if I can trust my own judgment anymore." "Then don't decide now," Alexander said, standing up. "Take time, read the documents, verify everything I've told you, and if you can find a way to believe in us again, I'll be waiting." He headed toward the door, then turned back one final time. "Maya, for what it's worth, meeting you in that cafe was the best thing that ever happened to me. Whatever else is true, that moment when you looked at me like I was just another customer, that was when I knew what love really felt like." After he left, Maya sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the evidence of her mother's love story and tragic death. The shocking truth was even more complicated than she'd imagined, but it was also a truth that set her free from the horror of believing she'd been in love with her brother. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but for the first time in 6 months, Maya felt like maybe, just maybe, there could be sunshine ahead. The billionaire had fallen for a waitress who was belittled by others, but she had turned out to be so much more than anyone, including herself, had ever imagined. She was the daughter of a love story, the survivor of a crime family's machinations, and possibly, if she could find the courage to trust again, the heroine of her own happy ending. Maya opened the first document in Alexander's envelope and began to read her mother's story. It was time to learn who she really was, and there you have it, a tale of love, deception, family secrets, and shocking revelations that changed everything. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are brought to their knees by the simplest emotions, and sometimes the most ordinary people discover they're connected to extraordinary stories. Maya's journey from invisible waitress to the center of a criminal empire's downfall proves that we never really know where life will take us, or who we really are until we're tested by the impossible. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster. If you enjoyed Maya and Alexander's story, remember that love, truth, and courage can triumph over even the darkest family secrets. Sometimes the most shocking twist of all is discovering that the love you thought was wrong was actually the most right thing in your life.